April Fools.
And this is Idle Thumbs 204. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Breckon.
I'm Danielle Riendo.
And I am James Spafford. Hi.
Hey, this is Spaff, one of the original Idle Thumbs. In fact, I think you came up with the name Idle Thumbs, as I recall.
Whoa,
No
maybe.
kidding.
I should just take credit for that, even though it might not be correct. So, yes.
I think it might have been Bob or someone, maybe Alex. Yeah, Alex, I don't know. But you were there when the site was first created, when we did this back in 2004.
Yeah, with the guys.
Yeah.
Then you made it really popular and cool and did this podcast. So, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm cool by association now, so it's the best.
Yeah. So Jake is out this week, but Spaff just moved to San Francisco from Brighton.
I did, in the UK.
Yeah, in the United Kingdom to work.
Some Brighton.
There's probably like Brighton, Missouri.
Ohio. There's Brighton, Massachusetts. Which,
that's true. It totally is.
I spent
there
a
are a lot of
time
very English-sounding names in Massachusetts.
That's
I remember that.
certainly
They use them all up on the one
In
state.
New England, yeah.
Imagine that, right?
in the current England.
Yeah.
New England supplanted
The replacement
England.
England.
Right, yeah.
England 2.0. It's perfect.
So
Jake's at
I've come
Disneyland.
here to the replacement England.
Oh,
That one is destroyed.
This is what, the whole thing's New England?
this is New England now.
Yeah, true.
Well, that's a thing in Infinite Jest, actually. New England. Anyway,
That's true, yeah. You've been reading that.
too much of it.
Welcome, Spaff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I
Where's
don't know.
Jake? Where is
It's
he?
weird not having Jake here. I
is.
realized how weird it is.
There's a whole
Usually-
section of the room that's just
Yeah.
empty
I
that
know.
usually has Jake and Jake's antics.
Well, usually Jake and I spend like 30 seconds awkwardly bullshitting until we can figure out what we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I'm just doing it with myself. So it's terrible.
You're in charge, basically.
Yeah, it's
So-
the worst. I hate it.
You're the adult in the room now.
But if I had to bet money, I would bet that Danielle's played like 4,000 games.
I have. In my life, yeah.
I would
Really?
say
But none this week.
since last
I've
week.
played like 4 since last week,
Okay.
but I'll probably only really talk about 2 of them because
Okay.
they're the more interesting ones to talk about.
All right.
Probably.
What are any of them?
Well, I've been playing a lot of Bloodborne still.
Right.
A ton of Bloodborne. I'm playing so much Bloodborne that I'm actually like
Made of blood.
I am made of blood. I was born of blood.
You were born
Right.
from
It's
blood.
true because my mother gave birth to me and there was a lot of blood, so I was bloodborne.
Wow.
Thanks for that.
Anyway, video games is a legitimate art form.
Video games. Well, okay, so I'm playing this game. I'm playing this game with a coworker for a Let's Play series that we're
Right.
doing, and I'm also playing this with my girlfriend at night, like
Right.
streaming it. And so when I'm not doing those things, I'm cutting the footage of the Let's Play series. So I'm always looking.
You're essentially consumed by Bloodborne.
I really am. I am just, my whole life is in blood right now, just written in blood.
So did you dream of Bloodborne? Because that's what always happens when you...
No, but
play
I
games
had a dream that you will all appreciate. I had a dream. I'm sorry. This is a little...
That was your natural.
heard this.
That was your natural.
Let me
like,
tell you,
New
I-
Englander oratory
was.
instinct.
Yeah, no, that was that took over.
Exactly.
That was you were possessed.
You
You're
probably
just like
saw it in my
watching
eyes,
New
like-
England, like
Era.
I may tell you. Very briefly, I had a dream that will interest all the people in the room, and because it involves Steve Gaynor. Not like that.
Oh, I had a dream about Steve too.
What?
Okay, go Danielle first.
Okay, we've been incepted by Steve or something. Okay, I had a dream where I went over to quote-unquote Steve's office where he had a VR game that was about dinosaur lesbians in space. I am not even kidding.
Wow, mine is shockingly similar.
What?
Anyway, keep
That is
going.
not what I expect you to say.
Keep going.
I mean, like, that's pretty much
was
the
it?
premise. Like, I played this game, and of
Yeah?
course, because
How
it's a
was it?
dream, it becomes reality. So there were
Right.
dinosaurs stalking me, and they were dinosaur lesbian people. It's weird. Dreams are weird. Anyway, I really liked it, I guess, and told Steve
game?
it was a good game. Yeah. The game that became
Did you
life
actually
that
think
was
it's a
also
good game, or did you just
Okay.
tell Steve that it was a good game?
And I told him it was a really good game, and he was very pleased. He just
Good.
sort of smiled and nodded.
He probably, just knowing Steve, he's probably like, I know.
He's kind of like, yeah, it was pretty good.
That's true. You're correct.
One of the better ones.
No, that was
I made it good on purpose.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What was yours, Nick?
My dream was that I went to Steve's office and I had to play his new game. So it's literally the same dream. And
What's going on?
I don't remember exactly what day I had the dream, so hopefully
It was recent.
Yeah, it was
Oh
recent.
my god.
And but he wouldn't let me play test the game. There was some like was like, you must be this tall kind of like requirement. But the version of that for Steve's game was, I had to basically become a cyborg and then fight another cyborg, and if I won, I could play test his game. And that's not an exaggeration. It sounds like something I like made up.
No, really,
that's what the dream was. It was like, oh, you've got to like get a metal arm and then fight this guy, and then you can.
Wishes that's what he could do to like
really
gate people from playing this game.
Right? Yeah.
Well, he let me play his game in
I don't remember.
Another sort of muted,
lost, so I never played it.
Like exploration,
Probably.
It was about dinosaur lesbians.
Enter
You
the
guys have some
Thunderdome.
rad dreams. Cyborgs, dinosaur lesbians, and Steve Gaynor.
Yeah.
And Steve's office, though.
In Steve, it was in Steve's
is a
office.
place that I've never been.
It was very specifically Steve's
Apparently, my brain
office.
wants to go to.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a special moment in my life right there.
Have you been playing Bloodborne as well, Nick? Because maybe Bloodborne makes you dream of that.
No.
That's why.
That makes sense. That makes so much sense.
I haven't played Bloodborne, but it's like. I didn't even know this game existed until a week ago.
I didn't. Yeah, I know. I didn't either.
I don't.
I mean,
it's from
a Souls
the Dark
game
Souls
with
guy.
I like
crazy
Demon Souls and
art,
Dark Souls a lot. So I mean,
it's really good and really hard and aesthetically insane. You know, like it's the what was it? Ed Hardy goes to Disneyland or something was. Jake said
Victorian
last week.
Ed Hardy.
Victorian Ed Hardy. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, Ollie Moss by way of Jake.
Yes. Good deep cut there. But yeah, I talked about it last week, so I don't have to go on and on about it or anything. But
Man, Ed Hardy goes to Disneyland though would be a good theme for something.
It really would. Like, maybe Steve's next game. Just throwing it out there.
I know. I prefer the one with the lesbian dinosaurs.
Maybe that's the same game.
Great.
In the internet era, that's just what the internet demands. It's like every concept.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with that. That's just the classic internet. Like, what? A game about dinosaur lesbians, Victorian steampunk Ronald McDonald? Take my money. I throw my money at
Throwing the money at the screen.
Money. Yeah, the GIF with the guy from Futurama.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder if anyone actually does throw their money at this. Like, takes it too far. They've read, I've read on the internet that people throw their money at the screen. Maybe that's
a lot
thing
of
I should be
change.
doing.
Just like hard currency. Just
They're pelting their screen with it.
yeah.
That's either the person who's like new to the internet and it's like, this is what they do. Right.
Like
or it's just like the inveterate, like Reddit /Imager user who just has now received that person's life is just memes now. Yes. Everything, like they have no arms because they've bloody pulped them, hitting the keyboard into the GIF for the guy.
Yes. Yep.
Anyway, I'm going to move on. Speaking of Bloodborne, so last week my main contribution to the Bloodborne discussion, having played other Souls games, but not this one. I don't know if this counts as a Souls game, but a game in that vein. I kind of like mused about whether what the kind of intention and motivation behind the extremely muted setting and like really pulled back, withdrawn, and like also withholding nature of those games is. And like I was deluged with responses from people who sent me links to interviews with the director Miyazaki about his background and his intentions with those games, which was really, really cool. I guess there was a Demon Souls art book that came out that has interviews with him and sort of just like production stories, I guess, that really goes into that. And I guess the short story is that stuff was quite intentional. The very sort of muted tone and really sparing kind of drip feed of information. One of the interesting things I have learned over the last week is that when Miyazaki was growing up, he had sort of like a rudimentary understanding of English, but not a fluent understanding of English. And he would read Western fantasy books like Lord of the Rings and things like that, and only be able to understand like bits and pieces of it. So his experience of reading this literature was just like grasping at these huge worlds, and he had to sort of fill in all the blanks in his own imagination in between the bits that he could actually understand. And so like he, in making these games, like his intention was to recreate that sensation of like, you only get
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's
Isn't
Bits and pieces.
That's amazing.
It's really, really cool, and it's something I've read a few of those links too, because there's a thread in it on Idle Thumbs, and folks had said there was some really great example of like, I'm going to paraphrase this, but an artist came to him with a concept, and I think it was on Dark Souls 1 for a dragon that was like undead, and it was like had maggots and rotting flesh, and he rejected it, and he was like, there needs to be like dignity to this character. Like it's like a quiet sadness basically that he wanted.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Let me see if I can find the quote about this, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it was a really great, sort of idea that this quiet, sad dignity was sort of a part of the character designs. And I have to say, on Bloodborne feels very much like, so if the Souls games were a response to sort of Western fantasy tropes and maybe potentially bits and pieces of sort of Western religion, Bloodborne feels like a completely off-the-wall take on Catholicism. Like everything about this game is like dripping in Catholic imagery. There are crucifixions, there are blood rituals, there's so much language that like...
That is really popular, I've noticed, among Japanese... Like,
it's fascinating.
There's a lot of Japanese pop culture that has kind of a weird, like, exaggerated pastiche Catholicism to it.
And it's super weird. I mean, the whole world that is taking place in, and like it originally looks like it's maybe like goofy, almost Tim Burton-esque sort of thing. But then it goes into so many churches and and like mausoleums, and there are priests, and there's all this stuff about transformation and blood making transformations.
Yeah,
and
it just
such.
feels like something that they, latch onto as sort of like just another fantasy thing. Just like, this is super sick.
I mean, I guess the
Tim Burton-y
Maybe he
imagery.
read the Bible in the same way.
It's like, here's the Bible.
What if Jesus had a corrupted arm? Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean,
there
that
are
happens in the
priests
reverse
that you
direction.
Fight and
That happens in the reverse direction too, right? I mean, samurai and ninja and stuff are just like, used in the most
of course,
crass ways. Absolutely.
Let me read this. This passage here with Miyazaki, and then one of the lead artists from the game named Waragai. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. Miyazaki says, "There's a certain sense of refinement, elegance, and dignity that is very important to me. I'll usually tell the designers that flat-out grotesque or splatter-type designs will not get past me. This has everything to do with my own personal sensibilities, and it is something that I apply to every design that I approve." And then the artist says, "I remember when I was drawing the undead dragon, I submitted a design draft that depicted a dragon swarming with maggots and other gross things. Miyazaki handed it back to me saying, 'This isn't dignified. Don't rely on the gross factor to portray an undead dragon. Can't you instead try to convey the deep sorrow of a magnificent beast doomed to a slow and possibly endless descent into ruin?'" So,
Wow.
It's kind of beautiful. Yeah, it's
imagery,
kind of nice.
Which is, and that's one of the reasons that obviously, even before I read this stuff, that is the sensation that I took from those prior games. And I have to admit, it is a little bit harder for me to get excited about the more sort of bonkers off-the-wall version of Bloodborne, not because I don't imagine that there could be strong artistic coherence and intentionality behind it, but just because that way of presenting a world feels so much more common in video games generally. Like, the sort of, like, push it real far, like, it's crazy thing.
Here's the werewolves, they're going to eat your face.
Yeah. I mean, how would you compare Bloodborne's version of that to other games that go down a similar road?
I mean, it's certainly much, much more refined than, say, like...
that's cool.
What was the Resident Evil... not Resident Evil, but Shinji Mikami's game last fall. I think you played it, Nick. It was Evil Within.
Evil Within.
Something compared to something like that, which is off the wall and just horror tropes kind of thrown in. Bloodborne has a very, very coherent world. It is werewolves, and it is priests, and it is... It's Van Helsing, but not that shitty Van Helsing movie from 11 years ago. Basically, is kind of like a lot of what's going on with it. And there is a refinement to it, and there is like a very distinct color palette to everything. Every area in the world feels like a very lived-in place. And I actually really like the environmental storytelling. I know that's a really cliched term now, but it is actually really good in this game.
Yeah, those games are in it.
So, I mean, it is like certainly dialed up 10 notches beyond like the Souls games.
Yeah.
I mean, just because of how kind of goofy the general idea of like werewolves in Victorian England is just by its nature, but it doesn't feel false when you're actually playing it. Once you kind of get past the conceit of like, okay, this is sort of goofy. This is just a goofy thing.
Yeah.
It feels very coherent. And the sort of the Catholic imagery just sort of started really becoming apparent to me in the last day or two, where I'm just like, I'm just fascinated by the idea of, this is a Japanese perspective of religion also mashed in with these other things. It was kind of cool. And I also grew up Catholic and like went to Catholic school until like my whole life until college, basically. So I know a lot of that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm really enjoying the game, although I still think it's punitive in ways it doesn't need to be, just to be challenging. And I find that really aggravating. Like, there was a really horrible, it was kind of funny, but there have been a couple of really, really painful deaths from falling that we've had that were just like, oh man, that was so unnecessary. But like, lost everything. And it was a moment of true despair.
How do you get your stuff back in that situation?
It's nearby. I actually asked that when it happened. I was like, does that ladder have your blood echoes? But it's like
classic
nearby.
question. Gotta ask.
I
mean, you never know what the answer is going to be, but you gotta ask.
It was the ladder's fault.
Does the ladder have your blood echoes? I mean, we've all said it.
We've all said it at one time or another. I have a story for you. Yes.
I had this dream.
They were nearby.
I had this dream where I went to Steve Gaynor's office.
Oh my God.
And there was a ladder in there. And I was like, Steve, does that ladder have your blood echoes? And he was like, put on this cyborg suit.
And fight Nick Breckon.
I'll
tell you.
If Nick Breckon wins, he gets to play my video game. If you win, I'll tell you if this ladder has your blood echoes.
Everybody wins. Meanwhile, I'm fighting dinosaur lesbians
Dinosaur
upstairs in the office. It was an excellent time.
I have not played Bloodborne. I have not played any of the Souls games. I feel completely inept and useless. They seem stressful.
They're really stressful.
Did you play any of those, Nick? I can't remember.
I've attempted many times.
Right.
I did not get past the barrier.
So you wouldn't consider that being called playing. There's like a bit before playing.
Yeah.
Try and play.
Pre-play.
Exactly. I babied my way through an hour of it and just cried and went away.
You know what's funny is that I've only played Demon Souls and Dark Souls, and like a couple hours of Dark Souls 2, but not I wouldn't say enough to like make me qualified to talk very much about it. But certainly with the first two games, I found that I had to, like, when I played Demon Souls, I definitely had that experience of like, I played it and I bounced off it, and I'm like, this just seems really sort of obtuse and arcane. And then I tried it again a few weeks later, and it clicked, and I'm like, oh my God, this is actually amazing. And then I kind of had the exact same thing with Dark Souls again. Like, I loaded it up. It was a different type of it because I already knew what the deal was. So it wasn't as though I bounced off and said, what's this? Like, it's more just that I just didn't, like, I started like, oh, right, I remember this. Okay. And I stopped. And then I went back and I'm like, oh, right, now I remember the things I liked about it in the first place. So it was more of just re-noticing those things rather than having to penetrate them from scratch. But I still found that I had to, like, bounce off and try again each time, you know? And then even Dark Souls 2. And I think Dark Souls 2 maybe I just kind of didn't bounce back. Not because I don't think I could have. Not because I don't think I could have, but I guess because I'd already done it twice. And I was like, this doesn't seem like different enough for me to really need to like do this again. Like, I really have a hard time getting myself psyched up for sequels. It's a real just thing for me. I know that some people love sequels and that's fine, but I just can't. It is so hard for me to get excited about a direct sequel to something that feels the same, even if there are lots of little nuanced differences. It's so hard. It's just like a psychological thing that's very difficult for me to get over. And now I don't have a PS4, so now the barrier is even higher on this one.
The blood
so
barrier.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, I have a PS4 and Bloodborne, but no TV, so we could combo our lives.
So you can't
want to buy person with TV.
I mean, I have like a computer monitor. I don't know.
That might work.
Does it have an HDMI port?
You know, it might be too old.
You're useless to me.
I have two monitors. I have an Apple Cinema display that's like the ancient kind that was like a sandwich board. If any of you guys ever saw those, it's like a big plastic like bubble thing that's of the era of it's like
iMac era.
iMac like era. It's 1920 by 1200, so it's like, and it's an Apple display, so it's a nice display that goes up to 1200, like resolution. So it's still good, but it's it's just old, so it only has the weird whatever goofy ass proprietary
VGA weird thing yeah.
Apple was using at the time, which then has a like 6-inch by 6-inch by 4-inch adapter that you can turn it into just like a DVI cable or whatever that goes into my Windows PC.
That's video.
Yeah, it's some
cool.
It's some crazy fucking thing. And then my other monitor is this just like crappy Samsung monitor that I got with like years ago as a review unit for a like proprietary 3D glasses, like it was like an NVIDIA
3D glasses,
NVIDIA 3D glasses, and they had to include a like 120 hertz monitor so that it could, and I never used it once for 3D because I did not and still do not like care about like 3D stuff.
Wait,
really.
So you bought it because it had
I didn't buy
technology.
it. They just sent it to use it and they never asked for it back. So like I'm just like I'm not going to pay to ship this back to you. So now it's just
Three people lost their jobs
over this. Second monitor, but like that one only has VGA. I just see these old ass monitors and they're fine. They work totally fine. But it means I can't probably plug your PS4 into it unless you buy a VGA adapter for it. But then if you do that.
Ready to do that.
Ready to go.
Oh, excellent.
Man, speaking of games that have been like have a difficulty component that I'm wrestling with, I've played like 4 hours maybe of Ori and the Blind Forest, which is really like awesome in a lot of ways. I mean, it's like unbelievably beautiful. It is really gorgeous to look at. It has this amazing sort of pastel soft color palette and like beautiful animation. It's very smooth. It just looks gorgeous. It's a 2D platformer that I totally assumed just to look at that it would be a something fairly sedate. Just sort of looks like it would be.
That's what I assumed.
But in reality, there's a lot of really hardcore platforming in it.
Yeah.
Or there can be anyway.
Yeah.
And have you been playing this?
No, I played it for about 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Sort of like so
kiosk.
Like that's with this kind of game that is totally enough to know what the gameplay vibe of it is because it's like you get more abilities, but it's always a side-scrolling 2D platformer with fast kind of gameplay. And the thing that's weird about it, that I am finding odd about it, is I feel like games of this type these days tend to be really stripped down in their mechanics and really prize like being sort of pixel perfect and allowing you to really gauge like the exact point at which when you jump you're going to leave the platform and then so you can do really like extreme kind of hair's breadth moves and this game totally like has that in it, but because it's so softly illustrated and because everything has this like swaying thing to it and because it just there are parts about it that make it hard to gauge in those respects, which in and of itself is totally fine, except that because it also has a skill tree, it has a like critical path skill tree that's like these are skills you will get by going through the game, but then there's also like 3 secondary skill paths that you can level up with ability points that can be grinded because enemies respawn every time you leave the screen. So you can like keep powering up and getting more abilities that you choose. I find myself constantly second guessing, like, fuck, should I have been able to make that jump? Like, I can't tell if this is like, I'm being limited by my own skill or if I'm being hard limited by the game, or if I'm supposed to come back here later, or if it's just a special area that is like never going to be required and it's only for people to do a crazy thing. You know what I mean? Like
it's hard to tell.
None of this would be that big of a deal, except that I got totally stuck on a thing that I now know was a puzzle in a way that I didn't expect this game to have puzzles. Like you play the whole thing through like kind of platforming, but then you have to figure out like, oh, you interact with this thing using one of your tools in a way that was totally not obvious to me. And James Benson, who was the animator on the game and actually is also the animator on Firewatch, I'm like, dude, I'm totally stuck. And he's like, oh, you have to do this. And I'm like, oh my, I never, if you didn't tell me that and I didn't look it up, I would never have guessed to do that. And I don't suspect that is a universal experience. I imagine that for whatever reason, my brain just didn't go down the like pachinko slot to that. You know what I mean? Like I convinced myself, because as soon as I was stuck, I'm like, oh, I must just be missing something throughout the map. So I got enough ability points to buy the ability that's like reveals locations of pickups on your map. So then I'm like, fuck, these pickups all have just like names like Souls thing, or like, you know, they all have very like lore names as opposed to like concrete, clear like gameplay.
What the hell this does?
Yeah, they're right. And so I'm like, do I need that? Like maybe I need that. So I just dedicated like an hour to just like scouring the map and getting every single one of these pickups, including things that I really couldn't do. Like I spent ages grinding ability points so that I could get an ability that says allows Ori to breathe in clean water. And I'm like, oh, there's like power-ups under the water. There's like things that are on the map that are underwater. So I'm like, great, like I'll get this. I spent forever. Like I found a place that was like totally suited to just running off the screen and coming back, and then the guy respawned and you get him and you get the points.
Yes.
Because I thought that I was just like, I thought that it was my fault.
Sure.
That I wasn't able to get these. I'm like, I see that I have skills that I can get. Like, maybe I'm supposed to have them now. So I finally get this thing, and the water still hurts me. and I finally, like, when I asked James about this, he's like, oh, yeah, that's like dirty water. And I'm like, how do I know that? Because the game is so impressionistic and sort of like soft in its color. If this were Super Meat Boy or something, it would be so obvious.
It'd be like red.
Yeah, it would be just like, this water is bad, this water is good.
There would be spikes in it.
I would not have, like, I just assumed when I finally got this ability, I'd be able to dive underwater. But the water still hurts me. But the water doesn't instantly kill you. It just slowly does damage to you. So I spent, like, half an hour, like, doing this dive until I was so perfect at doing the dive that I would lose slightly less than half my health to like go get the ability and then come all the way back up to or to get the power up, and then come all the way back up to the surface like milliseconds before the water finally killed me. And I jump out and I'm like, is this what I'm supposed to do? This is the most hardcore thing I've done in any video game in like years. Like this is like I was pulling off some crazy shit.
From the
like,
speedrunning.
Yeah, totally. And I was like doing these crazy jumps so one of the things you can do in the game is you can plant a save point using one of the like different kinds of things you collect. And so there'd be parts where I would have to like, I would see a jump that I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to get over there. Like, but I would try like 6 times and I wouldn't, but I would be so close. So I'm like, maybe the game just expects you to be amazing. Like maybe the game actually expects you to just like hit the pixel exactly. And so I'd plant a save point right next to the ledge and just try again and again and again and again and again and again until I finally got it. And then I get over there and it's just like a little health orb. And I'm like, God damn it, I didn't remember what that thing, it was labeled, I guess, on my map, but I didn't remember that that's what the thing was because it just has some like name. Maybe it wasn't a health orb, but it was one of the things that was like very ambiguously named, you know?
Yeah.
And like none of this is like necessarily an indictment of the game itself.
It's an indictment of life.
Yeah. Yeah, you try so hard and in the end
it's just a fucking orb.
By confessing that you're the worst player of that game, I think you might actually have confessed that you're the best player in the world. You're now the best.
The funny thing is that this was all purely the result of me just when I didn't realize the thing that I was supposed to do, because it's a very Metroid-like game.
I was going to ask if you'd played a lot of
obvious
Metroid.
Where you should be trying a thing, because it's like one huge interconnected map. So I never knew there was a point at which I was actually stuck where I was supposed to go, because it felt like I was equally stuck with all the places that I couldn't go. So I'm just like, I'm going to fucking start tackling these things like in whatever order like I find them until I've exhausted all of them. And then eventually it seemed like I had exhausted every single place. And I'm like, there is nowhere left for me to go. And the place that was left for me to go is like a thing you do to the map that like changes the path of the map that I never would have known. But because I didn't understand that right then, I just started doubling down on my other instinct about the game. And it turned me into a weird, just like idiot machine. I'm just like, I'm going to become amazing at these skills, but none of them are the ones that will help
Weird
me.
Idiot
It's your
machine.
Spelunky habits coming to
Oh my
bear,
God.
isn't it?
That's true. You're right.
You're developing weird, like little micro skills that have really nothing to do with the whole.
Well,
but you're doing it because you're in that habit of.
But in Spelunky, those are valid because in Spelunky there is no designer just making up a puzzle. That, you know what I mean? I mean, there is in the secret weird quest to like get the eggplant or like go to hell.
Yeah.
But like in terms of just navigating that game, there's no like in this. in the jungle, in the like ice level, you just have to like figure out this puzzle. No, it's like every time it's just like figure out with your ingenuity how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, fuck, maybe I just have to be amazing. Maybe they made the actually like the hardest game. Maybe they made the game that's harder than Bloodborne this year.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
It looks cuddly, but yeah.
All that being said, like if you don't end up in a crazy, weird, just like self-defeating rabbit hole like I did, this game is really fun. Like I really enjoy the experience of playing it. I feel like I sort of, because of the way the art style is like kind of to me slightly at like as absolutely gorgeous it is, because it's felt slightly at odds to me with kind of the core like nature of the game. I worked myself into just like a second guessing thing, and unfortunately I guessed in the wrong direction. The game probably is in fact closer in true identity to what it looks like, which is still a pretty like hardcore platformer, but definitely one that errs a little bit more on the side of being a little more forgiving. And I was just wasn't sure which way to go. So
it definitely looked more like a chill thing. Now I know it's the Bloodborne
It's not. It's
The Bloodborne of beautiful
It's still not a chill thing, though. That's the thing.
I did have a sort of condensed version of that experience.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, oh, I'm missing these jumps. All right, I guess I'll just go away from this kiosk now.
You just quit.
Breckon.
Yeah. But no, yeah, for about 30 minutes, I did miss some jumps and thought, oh, well, clearly I'm just missing these jumps. I'm gonna get a running start and hit them just the right. Oh no, I need a skill for this.
Right.
How do I get that skill? I have to farm. Okay, now I'm gonna go do this whole thing. And then I ended up dying a lot in just very surprising ways. Just, like spikes and just things that I didn't.
Yes, that's another thing.
It didn't feel like something that. And I'm trying to recall exactly, because there was one moment where I just I must have died like 5 or 6 times in a row trying to solve the same sort of spike thing, and then I got just beyond that and died to something else, and it was just a sort of oh god, I'm getting 2 yards further every single time.
Because there are things like the sort of spiked brambles that do damage to you. They kind of animate slowly back and forth, and they creep over onto the non-brambled area a little bit. So it's like kind of it's not super obvious like where the exact point that you can that is safe is to me. And like especially if like me, you're sort of very slightly colorblind, things like that are actually just even more difficult, because the contrast maybe comes more in sort of the color than just the shape. And then that is just like 5% tougher for me to really just instantly parse.
Sure.
So it's just like that vagueness, I think, compounded the difficulty I had. But like all this being said, I can't say that I'm not having a ton of fun playing it and that it isn't gorgeous to look at. Like both those things are true. And I really recommend this game if you like a thing that is of that sort of Metroid Castlevania style and you like a good 2D platformer. Like it's totally awesome in all those respects. So anyway, Ori and the Blind Forest. It's cool. And like played tricks on my brain.
Yeah.
Cool.
I have it and I can't wait to play it.
Yeah.
I need something with, more of a color palette than Bloodborne.
Right, sure. Well, this is that. It is like amazingly beautiful.
I have played something with a different color palette, I suppose, than Bloodborne.
What is that?
A game called Spirits of the Xanadu. Yeah, that
I don't know
sounds
this game.
pretty exciting.
What is it about?
So this is a small indie game. It came out this week or last week, I think. It's a first-person exploration game set in an alternate 1980s future on a spaceship. So the spaceship is lost somewhere. You're the marshal or whatever.
What kind of game it is?
It's a first-person game.
Okay.
A sort of first-person exploration. There is some shooting, and there are guns.
So it's a first-person shooter.
It's a first-person shooter, but it's not really a first-person shooter, if it makes sense.
But you're wearing like leggings. And
Yeah, and there are like magazines that make like Harrison Ford jokes and like talk about and have like 80s colors and print and so on and so forth. It's actually a little bit like a budget Alien Isolation without the alien in it. Like the actual fun parts of like looking at the environment and looking at the propaganda and the art and things like that are all in there. There isn't an alien chasing you. There are robots and things that can kill you and are chasing you around, but they're not anywhere near as difficult or advanced as the alien AI. But this is sort of like I like to think of it as like a light budgety kind of version of that. And it's really fun to kind of creep around this spaceship and look at what went wrong and, get the little voice logs and read the little notes from the people and stuff like that. I'm enjoying it as like absolutely the opposite of Bloodborne. Like, kind of colorful, kind of chill,
cool,
you know, that sort of thing.
I mean, maybe that's where your dreams came from then. So
Maybe
it's a
it is.
combination of Bloodborne and the 80s
Oh my
future
God.
spaceship Xanadu.
I think you're
Harrison
right.
Ford jokes.
Somehow the dinosaurs got in there too, but you know.
Well, Harrison Ford is maybe a dinosaur.
Maybe he is a dinosaur.
What is the Harrison Ford connection? Well,
You
I'm
know?
looking at this now. It looks
It's very pretty.
yeah.
I
This is,
think.
well, you know what's interesting about this to me is that the sort of level of graphical detail is a thing that I've always thought could be used to better effect than
it's
it
your
is
Deus
now.
Ex 1,
Yeah, it's like the Deus
hypothesis.
Ex
Yeah.
1 kind of era of
Very
of
simple
technical
3D
detail.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. It's like totally enough to have like distinctive lighting and shapes and
Yes.
spaces, but you know, able to be created by a small number of people.
I think only two people made
yeah,
this game.
I believe that.
And it shows in a good way, I think. It feels like a personal, not personal, as if like this was somebody's story. I don't think in the alternate 1980s here they were on a spaceship.
Yeah.
But like it feels like something that like, you know, a really tiny little team made and they loved it and they kind of put love into it. So it's a really nice little palate cleanser-y kind of game, I think.
Nice. So it's called Spirits of Xanadu. It looks like it's on Steam.
Yeah, it's on Steam right now. It's on sale on Steam right now, I think, possibly.
Cool. Looks like it was a Greenlight game. I guess a lot of things are Greenlight games
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
You guys want to take a break?
Sure.
Sure.
Break. Video game. This episode is brought to you by MeUndies.
Ooh.
Yeah, a provider of high quality underwear and other things to put on your body.
Yes.
If you go to MeUndies.com/thumbs, you can get 20% off your first order and free shipping.
Excellent. They have undershirts, underwear of any description, boxers, briefs, everything in between. It's very
What
very
is between boxers and
exciting.
briefs?
Probably boxer briefs. Mostly.
Good point. Why did I ask that question?
Many cuts. A cut for every occasion.
True. Yeah, these are great. I was actually at Disneyland recently, and I can attest that it is important to have high quality underwear.
Yes.
In that,
In that scenario?
yes.
It's so exciting that
No, you're walking around like outside in relatively hot
Yes.
weather for like a long period of time, and you're going on rides where like water splashes on you, and like just this, you're really just like putting your garments through their paces.
It's true.
So you want good ones.
all that
And MeUndies
nasty
is actually
foods that you have to
Yeah.
eat.
yeah.
The rides that go up and down. All that
Yes.
sugar.
MeUndies is really high quality underwear. I can personally attest to that. MeUndies.com/thumbs, 20% off your first order. They have wacky designs.
What flavor of
awesome
design
ones.
did you take to Disneyland? Did you take Disney themed ones?
I actually am boring. I do just like basic colors.
Gray.
I mean, like colors, but
navy
like
blue.
solid colors. Yeah.
Solid.
So yeah, thanks MeUndies.
Thank you, MeUndies.
MeUndies.com/thumbs. Video game. This episode is also brought to you by Ex Machina.
Ooh.
Yes, the new film that is the first is the directorial debut of Alex Garland, who was the writer of 28 Days Later and Sunshine, both of which were I thought cool.
Yeah.
This is his first movie that he has directed, in addition to writing, and also the first time we've ever been sponsored by a movie. I think.
Yeah.
pretty cool.
This is a movie about an AI robotic woman and this young man who encounters her, and there's intrigue and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
kind
She
of
sort
movie.
of called to mind the Talos Principle for a moment.
Yeah, it kind of actually does
yeah.
share visual similarities, I would say, and thematic ones too. Yeah, for sure. So this looks, I think, cool. Also, Oscar Isaac is in it. I had never heard of him, I think, until Inside Llewyn Davis. And now he's just like in the most broad-ranging
Yeah, it's crazy.
set of roles. It's really fascinating. He's in this, and he looks totally different in all of them. Like
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Also, I went back and realized I'd seen movies with him in it before Llewyn Davis and did not have any idea that
Did
that
you
was
see
Oscar
A Most
Isaac.
Violent Year?
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
And he was in that as well. That's actually weirdly from the same studio making Ex Machina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really odd coincidence. I don't know if that is why he's in
That's
both of them.
kind of cool.
Yeah, but I saw that in theaters a few weeks ago and loved it. And Oscar Isaac is in that and looks totally different than how he does in Llewyn Davis, which looks totally different than how he looks in Ex Machina. which looks totally different than how he looks in, I guess, the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
anyway,
totally. In everything, yeah.
yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like that movie Her, which was like
Oh, yeah.
A little bit,
a bit
yeah.
of that, but then a little bit of PetMan. And like, kind of somewhere,
Boston
like
Dynamics.
whatever Boston Dynamics is
Little
up to,
terrible robot
somewhere
Yes.
creature
plugged
in the mix.
into
Yeah.
an AI. Mm-hmm. That's what this movie is.
Yes. All right. So that's
Sounds like a mix I could get down with.
So that is Ex Machina, directed by Alex Garland. It comes out in New York and LA April 10th, and then will increasingly open wider after that.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thanks, Ex Machina.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Cheers.
robots. Video game.
Thanks, Robot
Thanks,
Future.
Big Dog.
Remember that we did this for you when the revolution comes.
Let us
Remember
live.
that we plugged the movie.
We made you a star, robots. Thank
Help
you.
the little people. Thank you.
This is just fucking
We
strangling the
appreciated
last
it.
human.
It was our big break.
This is Nick who dreams of killing cyborgs.
That's right.
You're out.
That's right.
We heard that.
You're the first to go.
Unless you beat us in hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah. My cyborg Bloodsport. I
Is your
drive.
Is your
was the other
cyborg Bloodsport down that ladder? Oh my god, we have to continue. We have to move on.
one. Drive was the other one that I.
He was in Drive?
Yeah, he played Standard, the dad of the family that he gets involved with, that Ryan Gosling gets involved with.
I still don't remember him being in it.
That's the
you.
thing. I had no idea. That was the real one where I went, oh my god.
Yeah.
I watched an entire movie with that guy and had no
Yeah.
idea that was Oscar Isaac.
Huh.
He's taking over the world. He's actually a cyborg. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Starts like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably is the twist.
It might be the
robot
twist.
making other robots in
Yeah.
the woods. That's why he's in the woods.
Naturally.
Acceptable.
I'm actually looking it up.
You're going to spoil yourself.
I'm going to actually go see the movie, so I don't want to.
Yeah, I actually am interested in it.
If you did spoil yourself, then your
you better be wearing
MeUndies will.
MeUndies.
Yeah. We'll take care of that for you.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
What?
You don't want to be spoiled.
Oh, video games.
You know what? Are we back? Do you guys want to be back?
back.
Let's be back.
Nick, you have not been here for the past 2 weeks when
man.
we talked about Cities Skylines.
Yeah.
How much have you been playing this game
I
at
have
all?
been playing it quite a bit.
Oh yeah? What is the Nick Breckon verdict on this? Of course that's the Nick Breckon verdict on things.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I went through like an up down experience with Cities.
Okay.
I expected to love it. Had a tough time playing it early on, and then got into it and was pleased as punch that it was doing the things that it was doing. And I won't rehash all the basics for people because I'm sure you guys have covered them. The thing that my experience with this game is, a huge chunk of like 6 hours of just delight, and then my city just kind of on its own is now generating $1 billion a day. I've kind of built all the buildings that are available, and I guess I'm sort of done with this because the challenge, like, it's an interesting thing because I know there are probably a lot of people that play games like this as a sandbox, or at least that is the thing that they get the enjoyment from.
Right.
It's
That's
the
me.
paintbrush effect of just, I want to just kind of, sculpt this city in like my own image and just kind of make several different types
Which
of
you
cities.
can do in this game with a height map of a photograph of your face.
Right.
Or
Yes.
Snoop Dogg.
Yes, you could
Yes.
actually
Snoop
just
Dogg,
create
Yes, yes.
Breckon world if you wanted
Right.
to.
In fact,
Please, someone make Breckon World.
well,
Yes,
so,
yes.
so it was our buddy Nels who does the Terminal 7 podcast on the Idle Thumbs Network. It's our podcast about Netrunner that's hosted by our buddy Nels Anderson. And for he linked to this Imager gallery of a friend of his that made Nelser Town in City Skylines,
Yes.
like as a birthday present based on like a 3D height map of Nels's face, and they built a whole town
Right.
on top of it, and like
got the colors right.
Put the coal factory where the brain would be. And all
perfect.
Shit,
Where the brain would be.
I hope they used. I hope they used his amazing Twitter avatar as their photo.
I can't remember. I don't know because I can't remember what a Twitter avatar looks like. But
it's classic.
But yes, you can definitely make a city literally in your own image.
Yeah,
it's not what you meant.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Nick.
No, that's kind of what I meant. But no, I mean it. It for me. I played all of the SimCities for hundreds and hundreds of hours, and it's weird. The one thing I did do is I went and loaded up the most recent SimCity just to do a direct comparison, just out of just weird curiosity, because my memory of that game was not great.
Yeah,
and I kind of found that the things that I dislike about SimCity, cities directly addressed. The things I dislike about cities, SimCity I think does better. Okay. And now I had this impression of just God, I wish somebody would I hope the next cities kind of addresses the things that people, I presume, are also pointing out.
So the former category, we probably a lot of things we've talked about. But what are some of the things in the latter category for you? Not that I'm saying I can't imagine anything, but I'm curious.
So for me, and this is totally subjective, but art direction, I don't.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
And honestly, I don't know. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that particular aspect of SimCity. Just seeing, I mean SimCity in general, not just the most recent SimCity, which I think was relatively gorgeous. But even just SimCity 4 to me, I think is
opinion.
Yeah.
Sure.
To me, SimCity 4 is still the most perfect version of this type of game. I don't know. It's weird because the most recent SimCity, I do not think it's really obnoxious they didn't name it SimCity 5, because I have to say the most recent SimCity.
Yeah.
If I just say SimCity, it means nothing. But the last SimCity. Ugh.
I guess
what happens when there's another one?
The last of Maxis's SimCities.
That's sad.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's a bummer.
It really sucks. But no, I think that it's weird because that game, the sort of gameplay treadmill in SimCity 4, I feel that was the most perfect version of that. It's weird when you play that game and go back, and it's on Steam, and so you can very easily now. And it really does the most excellent job of, okay, I've sort of got my city under control. Oh no, one thing is wrong. Now I have to fix that. Oh no, that caused this problem over here. Now I have to do this. And it does it in such a perfect way. It's hard to describe exactly what it's doing. But it does it. It also does simulate, 4 does simulate citizens without actually showing them on the map. It does do the thing where, you have a subway and it's taking 400 people from over here to over here. It's doing all of that stuff. It's just not as, graphically robust as recent games. The treadmill in SimCity, I think, is better than the one in Skylines, but it's also just not a great version of it because, God, going from cities, which is basically... After an hour, you have all the money you'll ever need, and your city is totally fine, and there are no problems whatsoever. Going back to SimCity, it was holy God, it takes a half an hour of just sitting there waiting for the checks to roll in before I can build a fire station. You spend so much time just waiting for just the most minimal amount of dollars.
So for what it's worth, and I don't know if this necessarily addresses your complaints, but I feel like after you've kind of gone through it once, you can get around that when you're anticipate, if you go and you look how many citizens you need for the fire station to be built, at least on your first big run of everything, you can kind of, because you get a big cash infusion.
Oh, I was talking about SimCity, not Skylines.
Oh, my bad.
My experience with Skylines is that basically you can, build up to how much money you have, and it just sort of compounds where you start out with a certain number of dollars, you're going to build residential, industrial, commercial. Then you're going to be at a certain clip after that, which will then let you build probably twice as much the next sort of spurt of growth, which will then allow you to build about 4 times. It's just very easy. It's a baby game, Chris. I don't know. I honestly felt like it was just way too simple in the end game. And I don't know,
So
also, I did have some just really basic design problems with it, like the fact that you can't draw a road all the way through a bunch of roads.
Yeah, that is pretty.
There are just little things like that it's really interesting to go back and play the other SimCity, which again is super flawed in and of itself. But it's like, why didn't they just do the thing that? I mean, I'm sure there are reasons, but for me it was like, comparing these two things. Neither of them are really exactly what I want, and I'm being a really like weird PC game guy by, I guess, just like, wanting the perfect version of like the thing in my head. Yeah. But like,
so this isn't going to like make you like the game more. But if I were to,
I like the game, to be clear.
No, I know. I just mean, you know what I mean. Like, if I were to answer your criticisms, I would say that the kind of game that City Skylines is more rewarding to like micromanagement than SimCity. It's just more about micromanagement than SimCity is to me. Like, it would be nice, for example, if it had the like drag a road across a bunch of roads and it creates all the intersections for you and doesn't make you draw 5 line segments to get the thing out. Like, that would be nice. But it also, like, the fact that it doesn't do that sort of reinforces this, like, because traffic is so highly simulated, the game is like really focuses on like, with the one-way streets and like the highly simulated nature of traffic, like it really rewards this like really close attention to detail, really careful planning. Like there's a whole community. This is part of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks on the show. There's definitely a really strong contingent of like extreme traffic management people who have like, come out of the woodwork to like apply their knowledge of real world, like,
like actual traffic engineers who have like posted their
to like this game, which feels like it supports that stuff to a much more detailed, granular degree than a SimCity game typically does. And this game is just kind of more about that kind of thing.
I'm getting my like SimCity 4 itch because I just that game simulated. I mean, again, like you don't see the individual cars being simulated in the way that the modern games are doing, but it still was simulating traffic patterns pretty accurately. At least in terms of, and to be fair, you can't do the minute, like I'm dragging an on-ramp onto this thing. You know, it was still sort of like the chunky, like I'm going to build this.
But that's the exact kind of thing that people really get into with this game.
Yeah,
that exact stuff.
I mean,
it's like, do you want a like
dilemma.
T junction versus a J junction? Like all these crazy terms I'd never even heard of that are like, there are different theories about like which of these is the most efficient way to like integrate 5 different interstates, and like you can download, you can go to the mod store, like the Steam Workshop, and download these like crazy prefabs. And like, I'm not saying this is not like a thing that is just automatically likable about the game, right? Like it's just, I'm just saying this is, I think, what this game is kind of about. And it's just I think it's a slightly different thing than what SimCity games are generally about.
It's more of a transportation kind of a thing, which feels very European, like a European take.
It's
on
also
SimCity.
The legacy of the developers. Like their previous 2 games were all about transit.
Yeah,
and sewerage.
But that's the funny.
And what?
And sewerage. Like, just a ton of sewerage, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to beat it to death.
No.
But I mean, I feel like even with that though, like I guess the way I feel about it is I feel like I need to just load up the mod store or the workshop, because I feel like that's kind of what you have to do at a certain point. To me, like if it was about transportation, I feel like there are things about it that I just really found not great. Like the subway system, I did not like. The design of that is kind of a mess to me. Like I don't know if you tried to build one.
Oh yeah. No, I've built really like extremely high amounts of transit. I think that the actual systems themselves are great. I think the UI could be better. Yeah. And people have like done things like released alternate transit UIs, for example.
Yeah.
Some of which the developer has like incorporated into recent patches, but some of which are still more extensive in mods. So I suspect this will be a game that, unlike the recent Maxis SimCity, just due to that game's like total unfriendliness towards mods, I suspect this game will be a really interesting landscape like a year from now.
Yeah.
I mean, I already like it a lot, but I think it will have a more like Civ 4-esque, like long life, just due to what they're choosing to support.
Yep.
Like that was the thing that was really cool about Civ 4, was that game really lived for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And this game I feel like could also, if they do well by it.
In another recent thumbs trend of people talking about people who only play one game, or like their dad only played one game.
Right.
I could see this being absolutely that for people.
Jake's dad.
Jake's dad.
Jake's dad is like, I don't know if you know this. Jake's dad, because Jake mentioned it on a podcast recently. Jake's dad is like an acoustical testing engineer guy who, like, one of the things that is important in his job is things like noise pollution and creating sound barriers and roads and all these things that City Skylines has. Like, noise pollution is a huge driver of citizen happiness or unhappiness in this game. And so there are all different ways that you can address that problem. And so the exact thing Jake's dad does in his job.
Crazy.
So I'd be very happy if this becomes, if Jake's dad finally, like, this is what brings him into video games.
Video game, probably, but yeah.
Video games, yeah. Do you think constructing the little tree barriers on his roads?
Yes.
Do you think it has the scope to do the opposite? Do you think people who get super into this game will just be like, ugh, I'm going to become a traffic engineer in the real world. I'm going to give up my...
I'm sure there's some 13-year-old.
So.
Yeah. Like...
I think that would actually be really cool. And I think that the mod thing is what would make that possible. In the same way that, like, Minecraft is probably not going to, like, inspire specific jobs in people intrinsically, but I think the thing that makes it such a, like, phenomenon among kids is that there's so much creativity that it allows for, and that there's this whole community of, like, it feels like like a living community, not just because of people making videos about it and posting on forums about it, but because the game itself, like, invites that. And with the way that that this game supports mods so heavily and integrates it directly into the front end through Steam Workshop, it feels like the kind of thing that maybe not kids as young as the sort of armies of kids playing Minecraft, but maybe, like,
junior high or something,
maybe junior high age kids could, like, this is totally the kind of game because I played the original SimCity on, like, Apple II or whatever and loved it. And, you know, Civilization for that matter, and, like, a bunch of other Maxis games. I could totally imagine kids of a certain age and demeanor getting really into this and getting just, like, learning weirdly a bunch of stuff about like city
traffic
planning
engineering,
theory. And like, because of how much of it's reflected back through mods, like, there are probably going to be really cool communities that sprout up. That it's going to skew older than a lot of games, but I think could totally have some kind of effect if on a smaller scale than something like Minecraft. And I think that would be cool. I mean, I'm a big fan of games that represent real world systems in a way that tries to do them justice. You know, like, it's impossible to ever fully tackle that stuff in a completely realistic, robust way in a video game, and probably wouldn't be fun to do it, like, to a complete level of fidelity. But when a game makes, like, an honest effort and really makes you feel like you're actually engaging with systems that exist in society, I think that's, like, a very admirable goal, you know, in game development.
I think there's a lot of cool, weird stuff in there that people are doing that, you know, maybe we should try in real life. Like, Marek sent me, our good friend Marek, sent me a picture of someone who'd made a bunch of hydro dams plugged into the sewer system, and it was just like all the shit coming out of the city, powering the city as well.
That sounds amazing.
Oh no, that's a common thing that people have they've like. That's just like the hat. That's like
this is the best way of powering a city.
Yeah,
powered by shit. Yes,
shit power. Yeah,
just the same water.
We should try that.
Yes, that sounds great. And clean it while it goes out. Then you have a perfect system.
Yeah, done.
This is what America should strive for.
Or maybe it already has.
We're already powered by shit.
Laundering our own shit and then feeding on it.
Shit.
America.
It would explain a lot. Yeah. Welcome to America.
Thanks.
Oh, excellent. Do we have reader mail, perhaps?
We totally do. We have a lot of reader mail.
Oh, excellent.
So Nick has to leave. Nick is for some reason not acknowledging that he has to leave. He's just making me weird hand gestures.
Out.
Nick is
He's not even going to say goodbye to you, the readers.
He's just going to knock things
say
over.
Say goodbye, asshole. What a weird person he is.
Bye, Nick.
Bye.
See you next week, I hope.
Nick hates reader mail and the readers.
And the readers.
That's why. I'm not listening to any of this drivel. I'm out of here. I'm not even saying goodbye.
These readers are like the shit that flows up against my dam.
They might power me, but
they stink like shit. The unwashed masses, indeed.
Okay, let's see here. So we got a lot of email about the Souls games.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I'll read this one because this was a little outside of the scope of what I talked about. Sure. A lot of them were about Miyazaki and his experience, and those were great. So thank you to everyone who sent those emails. I'm sorry that I can't read them all because that's why I kind of talked about it earlier, because there were a lot of folks who gleaned some information and then talked about that generally. But yeah, Jonathan Ness writes, Dear Chris, man, it's so weird to have someone address it directly to me.
Oh.
Demon's Souls and Dark Souls are two of my favorite video games. So when I heard you discussing them on your last podcast and wondering about their aesthetic and narrative direction, I thought I'd share a little background. From Software started making first-person action RPGs on the PlayStation back in 1994. They were the King's Field series, and they were extremely difficult and unforgiving. The main series had 4 games in total and 2 spiritual successors, Shadow Tower and Shadow Tower Abyss. Much like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, you were a lone protagonist, garnered with the task of righting some evil or discovering some truth about the world you find yourself in. You do this through exploration of a bleak, hostile world where you do not participate in the normal tropes of the fantasy RPG genre. The settings in the game's dark and muted, and the world becomes more dangerous with every step. NPCs are few and far between, if there at all, and rarely serve to drive the plot and gameplay. The backstory in the first few games was clear, but as the series progressed, both the player's background and the world's history changed, from something you learned in cutscenes to something you absorbed as you crept through a land devoid of laughter and safety. The themes of isolation and desolation are Kingsfield's signature. The aesthetics of the Souls series are taken from many sources, including the ultra-famous in Japan manga series Berserk and the classic horror fantasy of Lovecraft and Bram Stoker. Berserk is an old-running manga and anime that has been cited as inspiration for almost a generation of Japanese writers, artists, and game designers. Thanks, John. So that's interesting background, because that goes back further than Miyazaki's own involvement with the company, which I think he's been there for like 10 or 15 years now, like 10, 13 years, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but he's been there for a bit.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that I was reading an interview with him on Eurogamer, and he got that job when he was like 29 or 30, so a lot older than like a typical, like that was his first game industry job. Which still is a lot older than people who generally kind of like come straight out of college and go into video games. And he had sort of drifted around and was sort of described himself as someone who with relatively little ambition. And so kind of ended up at this company and like was just kind of there. Like he was sort of a junior coder and just kind of like did his time and didn't really like try very hard, it sounds like.
This is fascinating, yeah.
And then Demon's Souls was actually already in production when he joined the project, but was like a total disaster. Like it was just not going well at all. And he's like, man, I can just join this and like take this project over. And if I fuck it up, like it doesn't matter because I'm already like not important at this company. So like,
wow,
I'll just do that. And he apparently just completely changed like all aspects of the game and like really put his stamp on it really heavily. And that was the thing that sort of like made him a noteworthy figure at that company, and now he's the president of the company.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So he went from just like jackass, like
couldn't give a shit,
like
Nick Breckon,
goober,
to
being like president of the company and guy who's like basically responsible for this like phenomenon series it has.
Massive series, yeah.
Relative to like they're not a company that traditionally does like mega hits, so it's not a big hit compared to a lot of games, but they've sold hundreds of thousands of units, like each, I think, and for that company have been like very successful. So I thought that was a really interesting, weird.
That is really fascinating. Yeah. It's also funny that like if he has the sort of like at least early on in his career the slacker mentality, and then goes on to make like the hardest, most difficult, most punishing games, and so it's like, no, I'm done with the slacker time. Like I'm punishing that now.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. I could have done with this when I was young.
Yes. Like I could have used this discipline.
Yeah. I wonder what he was doing before that.
He worked for like Oracle just as an IT guy or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like database company or whatever Oracle
that explains
does.
Like really hardcore evil database programming.
Yeah, these games are actually based on that experience. Yeah. It's not, fantasy and Catholicism. It's like this is how he imagined IT actually was.
He had I can't remember. I think he had a couple different jobs, and they were just like whatever. They were just not. You know what I mean? They were.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they're like legitimate careers, but it sounds like he wasn't in them for that reason. He was just kind of there because he was.
He was just. That was just a job. Yeah.
When he joined, it sounds like when he joined From Software, it was like an 80% pay cut from what he was doing. It was like,
God.
Yeah, because he was super junior. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting summation back there.
Fascinating.
So Maxwell Young, this is an appropriate question. Spaff is here. Maxwell Young writes, Dear Thumbs, could you please explain the logo for Idle Thumbs, for it has me stumped. Maxwell Young. I like the foreign. For it has me stumped.
It has me
I love
stumped.
that.
That's not foreign to me. That's just how we'd speak.
True. In the old England. Bullshit old England.
The Idle Thumbs logo. There was an older logo. Do you remember that? Did you
I
say
do.
it wasn't really a logo?
It was conceptually similar.
It was.
Oh,
like,
you mean the even older one?
There was like a render of a.
That was
like
gross. That was never the actual logo. That was like
this was a render.
Okay, so
on a chopping block, like a butcher's
I hated
cleaver.
that thing so much. So okay,
Why was that around? I don't remember
because we used to be terrible. So when we were like starting Idle Thumbs, and when like before it was actually launched, and we were coming up with a name, and like whoever came up with it, Spafford, Alex, or whoever, the concept of the logo has like always involved a thumb.
Naturally,
I guess naturally,
right?
Yeah. And the guy who created it is named Stevan Zvanovic, who is he Serbian? I hope I'm not insulting his
ancestry.
ancestry.
Yeah.
But he lives in Galveston, Texas now, or somewhere in Texas, and has for years. But he did the I guess all versions of the Thumbs logo, right? He certainly
so, yeah.
he did the main one and the current one that we now use, like that replaced the classic one, which was also a thumb bashing a typewriter. And the reason it is that is because Idle Thumbs started as an editorial site with like quote news and just like bullshit essays and opinion pieces and stuff.
And it was back in the day when we had to use those typewriters to write everything.
That's true. Everything was written on typewriters and like
with our thumbs
faxed to the internet.
Yes.
We had to fax in our stories to the internet, and then they posted it on our website for us with typewriters.
Good times.
And mimeograph machines.
It's true. It is, but it's really weird to like try and do the.
I know. If you try and like recreate the weird like hands gripping each other and the thumbs, it's weird.
I think at that point, though, it was like so many names that were terrible and so many logos as well that were just, how do we, what is this?
Yeah.
And that one was like, oh, cool, that looks great. Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
You picked a winner.
That'll do.
Yes.
So the thing Spaff was alluding to was Did Stefan do that one as well?
I think so.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. There was a 3D rendered image of, was it 2 hands, each with the thumbs chopped off?
Just one.
Just one hand with like a cleaver, like
God.
that had cut off the thumb and it was bleeding. It was so gross.
Very Bloodborne.
It was like, it was really, I hated looking at it. It was upsetting to me because it was in that weird style where it was like stylized and cartoonish, but still gory, kind of like Team Fortress 2. If you imagine, like, it's like, okay, so it is to Team Fortress 2 what Ren and Stimpy is to Looney Tunes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, it's still cartoonish and like deformed, but it's just like a little bit more detailed than you want. Or not that it works.
Well, like the cut off thumb was like the meat in Monster Hunter or something. You know what I mean? Like hilariously, like a bone coming out of it.
Yeah. But it was still like gross and had blood, and it was gross and pools of blood, as I recall. Anyway, we got to stop talking about this. This is disgusting. So the reason that the Idle Thumbs logo is what it is because it took us forever to come up with a name, and then when we did, it had thumbs in it, and
it was about writing.
Stefan designed a thing that looked cool, and it was about writing, and that's it. David Petrocco writes, "Hi Thumbs, in episode 202, you mentioned experiences at the DMV. I thought I'd throw in how the DMV has changed here in Las Vegas. DMV overcrowding has been an issue for a while, and in an effort to fix this, without building more DMVs, they added in a new text feature. You text a number which DMV location you want to go, and it puts you in a queue. You then get told your position on the queue in an approximate time, usually in a few hours. When you get within 30 minutes of your time, it tells you to come on over. If you need more time, you can text how many minutes you need, and it will stall you in the queue. When you get to the DMV, there are 2 entrances and security guard. If you're doing a walk-in, you go in one line, get a ticket, and are told to go back outside because it's usually full. For people with the text feature, you show a guard the text and they let you in. When it's your turn, you get another text saying what desk to go to and take care of your issues. Due to the DMV catering to these people more than the walk-ins, the wait time if you don't use it is massive, 5 or more hours from what I've heard. But it's text only. There's no web form or anything, so if you don't have the ability to text, you're stuck out of luck. It leads to a weird split where most of the people are in a good mood because of how seamless the process is, and anyone waiting around is really, really mad. Enjoy your DMV Zen while it lasts, David Petrocco."
Wow,
that's like a really...
But kind of not the future.
Yeah,
like
see,
texting only, like not even iMessages or anything.
It's very like, that feels like a That feels like a Neil Blomkamp movie or something. Like, like a really obvious, like on the nose way of saying the haves and the have-nots because of technology. This is Elysium, the reality, like right here in Las Vegas, basically.
Or just anywhere in San Francisco.
Yeah, for sure.
All.
Yes, absolutely. We do live in a dystopia.
Danielle, I don't remember when you were at Disneyland or Disney World, like within recent memory, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you use their weird... I've never been to Disney World, so I don't know anything about it. But did you use their, like, wrist
New
thing?
Magic Plus. Yes. Yeah. I did. My mother has a lot of opinions about this. Most of them are very negative, even though she loves Disney. Spent $1 billion on this, and it's bullshit. That's my mother's opinion of this. So what it is basically your ticket media, your room key often, if you stay in a Disney hotel, and your fast passes, which are exactly like this works. You're basically making a reservation to go into a shorter line for a ride. That's how fast passes work. They used to be little pieces of paper, and the way it used to work was you would go to a ride, you would be in the park, you would go to a ride, you would put your ticket in, and you would get your fast pass out, a little piece of paper. And that's just how that worked for 15 years or something. But prior to this, there was nothing. It was just, there might be a wait, who knows. Then there were fast passes.
I mean, there will be one.
Yes, always in Disney World. Now everything has to be done ahead of time, including like weeks, maybe even months ahead of time. You'll have to schedule when you will have your fast passes. You can have up to 3 at a time, so you can have like basically 3 a day for different attractions. And it's really convoluted, and it really sucks. And a lot of people, even a lot of Disney fans, don't like it because going to Walt Disney World is already a regimented experience. You already need to know, where your dining reservations are, or basically what park you'll be in that day. You generally need to have kind of a plan if you want to actually see everything. You need to kind of like get there early and know which rides to get on first. So you already kind of had to do that. Now you have to do all of that, as well as have these 3 fast passes line up, 2 p.m., 4:45 p.m., 6:21 p.m. with your dining reservations. And if you are on different tickets, like this is fine for like, say, a family with young children or something. But like, I went with my girlfriend, and it was my father and my mother, so it was like 2 sets of adults who all have different schedules and different things are going on. So it was like almost impossible to actually like go to the park together and like do these things together.
Crazy.
It is an insane system.
Sounds like my worst nightmare.
It really sucks because it takes all of that fun of like, oh, maybe we'll, get into this ride today.
Because I read this like long, really fascinating Wired article about the development of this technology, My Magic Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
And it definitely made it sound a lot more seamless than you are, than you are making it seem.
Yeah.
I mean, and it made the reason I brought it up is because the article like said within it that like various, other institutions like, sports arenas and like airports and stuff have contacted Disney to be like, can we license this technology to use in our thing to like manage crowd control and like queuing and stuff.
Parts of it are great. Like it is great to have, say, your room key and your ticket and like the ability to get fast passes or whatever. Like it's basically a wristband. You can go to the shower with it. You can go in the pool with it and all things like that. That's cool. It's nice to have everything in one place. It's just the degree to which it requires extra planning, which feels like a very Disney thing, a very Walt Disney World thing.
You know what's funny about that? So I know that you East Coast types are so disdainful of Disneyland because it's like the tiny bullshit one. But like,
I've just never been there.
It's nothing like that. Like it's smaller, but one of the things about it is that even when it's pretty crowded, like we were there last week and it was spring break season, so it was like, you know, pretty crowded relative to like how it can get, but like you can still just kind of go around and do stuff. Like
that sounds nice.
You know what I mean? Like I never have felt the way that you describe at Disneyland. I have never felt the way you describe feeling at Disney World.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like we like the one exception to that for us was we got up at like really early because we were staying in one of the on-property hotels. Mm-hmm. So we got like an hour early.
Extra magic hours.
Yeah. To go get on the fucking Cars ride. That's like the most popular goddamn thing. That's like hours wait. So we got up early to do that. But like other than that, you pretty much just wander around and like do stuff as you have the... Sometimes the line's too long, so you just do a different thing instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way Disney World used to be. Like, when I was very young and I was going there, fairly often, that's kind of how it was. You would wake up early to do the, like, big roller coaster or one or two big things, and then other than that, you just walk around the park and you do what you feel like doing. It's just gotten absolutely crazy. Also, Walt Disney World specifically has just such a massive marketing campaign for, like, never ever having a downtime, basically. Like, the Run Disney stuff, there are something like 15 races, like running races at Walt Disney World. So, like, there are just never
those
any...
at Disneyland as well, but probably not as many.
Yeah, I know Disneyland certainly has them. It's like my mother, again, could tell you all about this. Maybe I'll bring my mom to the podcast one day.
That'd be amazing.
Just Danielle's Disney mom, basically. Right. But there are just never downtimes anymore. And whenever there is a quote-unquote downtime, they shut down. That's when they shut down attractions.
In terms of busyness?
Yes. It is always nuts at Walt Disney World.
I misunderstood what you meant.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I thought you meant, like, for your own visit.
Yeah, no, just like in terms of actual attendance. Like, I have been there. I used to go often on New Year's Eve, and that's one of the days where it's peak attendance, and they actually don't let people into the park, even if they have a ticket. Like, they actually, like, for fire reasons, basically can't let anybody else in. And it can be kind of miserable. Like, you can't go to anything. You have to wait in long lines, like, to use the bathroom, things like that, or to buy, like, a sandwich.
That's crazy because it's so huge.
It's massive.
God, Disneyland is so much tinier than that. It's never felt like that to me. Not that I've ever been there on New Year's Eve, but, like...
Sure.
But I've never,
It's a fascinating place. But yeah, this My Magic Plus, or I think that's what it's called, is really... It would have been cool if they could just kind of kept it at the, here's your stuff, instead of making you regiment your fast passes and have to, sort of decide on them weeks ahead of time. There is a restaurant, this is the last story I will tell. There is a restaurant at Walt Disney World that to get a reservation there, because they accept reservations, it's 6 months ahead of time. They may have changed it. They may have changed it at this point.
It's only 2 at Disneyland.
But for a long time, there was a 6-month exact thing, and because it was such a limited thing, and it was such a, like, this is like a princess buffet or something. I don't know the exact details, but you had to call at exactly 7:01 a.m. on the day that would be 6 months ahead of time. And if you couldn't get through within 15 minutes, you just had to quit because you would never get in.
There's restaurants like that in San Francisco.
Yeah, no, I know.
That's how you get into, like, the Fat Duck or, like, French Laundry or something.
Laundry
that's
or something.
How you deal with that. I didn't know, like, Disney World.
But it's in Disney World. Like, that's what's so crazy about it. Yeah.
All right, so...
Anyway.
Shay Pierce writes, kids are dumb. I played Wolfenstein 3D when I was a kid, but I would exclusively play it with a kid. One of us would turn around and move the character, and the other one would fire the gun. It was great. This was the entirety of my PC first-person shooter experience until I played Half-Life 9 years later.
Wow.
I always thought we were the only ones to play this way. Also, when I was 5 years old, I believed that it rained at night, every night, always.
He's from England. Yeah.
I think he's from Texas.
Oh.
I think I had seen some TV shows depicting rain at night, and basically I came to believe that for a few hours every night, no matter what, it always rained. Since I was always asleep at night, I couldn't disprove this belief firsthand, so I never even questioned it. I never asked anyone about it, because why would you talk about such an obvious fact about the world? It would be like asking someone whether the sun rose every day or just most days. If the ground was dewy in the morning, it was obvious to me why, because it had rained the night before. If the ground was dry, I figured the water had dried up before I woke up. Also, I live in Houston, which does get a lot of rain. I had this belief for a while, maybe until age 6. I think I watched a nature show about owls, which featured no footage of nocturnal rainfall, and it finally started to dawn on me that this was all something I'd made up. I've never told anyone about this until now. And now you've told everybody.
Idle Thumbs Confessions.
That's incredible.
Really
One reason I love video games is because they possess the ability to put you in a mysterious and unfamiliar world, where the rules of that world are unclear and must be figured out via trial and error. It's worth noting that this is one type of game experience that a board game can rarely deliver, since they usually require players to learn the rules of the world before they begin to live in it. But a video game can make you feel like a child again, born into a strange world where the rules are unclear and easily misunderstood. Though I didn't have the patience to stay with it, I respect Starseed Pilgrim and games like it, which require you to puzzle out the rules of their world for yourself. I think that adults easily forget that 80% of the experience of being a kid feels like that, just figuring out what the world is and how stuff works, and I think it's a good mental exercise to put ourselves in that place sometimes. Shay Pierce. P.S. I forgive Jake for saying that beards are gross, and I even forgive him for comparing them to goatees, which are totally gross, and undeserving of comparison to beards, which are awesome.
That was a quality email.
Yeah, good email. Good 3-part email.
That was a good one.
Are board games always that regimented? Can you?
I think Risk Legacy kind of has a bit of that feeling because you have sealed components. I mean, after you've played it once, I suppose that like it's a little less novel, but like certainly the first time you play that game, I definitely remember feeling like, oh man, I have no idea what these things are going to be.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And actually, you know what's kind of like that is Tales of the Arabian Nights. Again, especially the first couple times you play it. There are no rules in that game. It's just a bunch of shit that people made up.
Yeah.
So like you decide to do something and then you look it up in this big matrix and this like 500-page book of like all the possible things that can happen. And so there's just no way to predict. You're like, shit, I'm at this like river and there's a evil spirit attacking me and like I can run away or pray or drink the water or say something to him or attack it or hide, and there's just no way to know because you're like, oh, I'll retreat, that's like a safe thing to do, and it's like as you run a tiger mauls you from the forest and you're like, what the fuck?
It's amazing.
It's really fun as long as you go into it not expecting it to be a very board game like
procedural kind of
predictable
experience,
like rule based experience.
Excellent.
Oh, and I would say like maybe the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective game is like
that I really need to play.
That game is like very much about logical deduction, but also it's kind of just stuff people made up. So like it's still the game is like 10 cases, I think, and each one is just a uniquely written thing, and you like try to solve the mystery by reading through the newspaper, like the fictional newspapers that are included, and like scouring them for clues and tracking down leads and visiting people in their homes and businesses and like ask them about things. And it has kind of it has kind of a bit of that Arabian Nights thing where it's like you just can't predict what's going to happen because it's just human behavior that someone has like thought of, but it's a little bit less bonkers. Like you're supposed to be able to actually figure it out because you're supposed to try and like solve a mystery. But it's cool.
I guess the more connections they have with like pen and paper RPGs and things like that.
That's true. Yeah,
you just need to know the basic rules of and how to feel it out. Yeah,
makes sense.
Played a weird. I don't know if it's not really a board game. It's not really a role playing game, but it kind of is. It's called Two Rooms and a Boom. Have you ever heard of this game?
2 Rooms and a Boom.
Yeah,
it's a bomb defusal game, right?
Kinda. Not really. It's a game. You need 2 rooms.
Okay.
A bunch of people.
And a boom.
And you get assigned, like you have a card, and you're either on the red team or the blue team. And one person on the blue team is the president, and one person on the red team is a bomber.
Oh.
Right? And then you have 3 rounds. So you start in a room, and you elect a leader of that room. And then after 3 minutes, the leader of that room has to meet the leader of the other room and exchange 1 hostage from their room. And then there are 3 rounds of this. And at the end, the bomber is trying to get in the same room as the president.
That sounds really cool.
So that is a game where
it's kind of like Counter-Strike.
So you know that, and then there are no more rules. So then you're like, okay, how do we figure this out?
Figure it all out from there.
You can show each other what you are. You can try and conceal it. Or it's... It took us ages to figure out, but it was hilariously dumb.
It sounds fun, yeah.
I like stuff like that is really good, like real world.
I do enjoy things like that.
People.
I finally did an Escape the Room. I'll talk about this another time, but it was a spy-themed Escape the Room in New York.
Oh, cool.
It was really cool. But yeah, I can talk about that some other time.
Someone write in to ask Danielle about this.
Yes,
otherwise, we'll forget to bring it up. Write in questions at idlethumbs.net. All right, so here's, I guess, the last email for today. TTP from Anton Fletcher. He writes, "Hey guys, I've only recently started listening to the cast, tuning in for the late 190s. I'm trying to break in to game development myself. Check out my green light." Then he has a link that's got numbers in it, which somehow led me to the show. I found it an entertaining listen on the way to and from my grown-up job as a sysadmin. There was quite a lot of talk about user-generated content, and I've been shocked that despite what appears to be some rather dirty minds, no one has mentioned TTP. TTP is the metric used in games with user-generated content to measure how long it will take until someone creates a penis.
Time to penis, yes.
I'm not sure. Were you aware of this concept?
Of course.
Okay, I was not aware of this concept.
We call it TTC, time to cock.
Oh, sure.
Oh, very good. Very good.
I'm not sure if it was created or popularized by the penis monster simulator, more commonly known as Spore, but that's when I first became aware of it. Anyway, love the show, despite the impact on my wallet, as you have solidified purchases of Besiege, Skylines, and Darkest Dungeon already.
I have a good time to cock story. If you like.
Yeah, I do.
So,
please do.
I used to work for Media Molecule, creators of such games as Little Big Planet. And before I got a job there, my friend Tom and I, who also got a job there, were shocked that no penises were around. We're like, where are
they?
It was like days and days. Like the game came out, there's just no
penises.
No cocks. So Tom just made a huge, giant Little Big Planet sponge dick and then put a video of it on the internet. And then we got a job there later, and then took a video down. But which led him to make a website which probably isn't around anymore, which is littlebigpricks.net or something like that.
Excellent.
But it was just a collection of like, UGC dicks basically in other games. Yeah,
that sounds delightful.
I dealt with a lot of that stuff over the many years of working in Little Big Planet. It's fine. It's good.
Of course.
It's a good time scrubbing out the dicks, I'm sure.
This is like one of the strangest, lewdest pieces of user-generated content I've ever seen. There is a GIF I saw when we were talking about Besiege. People would like send us a lot of like crazy videos of just like bonkers Besiege user creations. And one of the things that someone sent me on Twitter, I guess it was a YouTube video. It was a video of a guy, of a huge like guy, like a big stick figure guy in Besiege with a huge dong just jacking himself off.
Oh, jeez.
And then it explodes at the end. Like,
of course it does.
That's what happens.
Yep.
That's how it works.
That's what I heard.
One of this, like, it was weird to watch.
Sure.
Because like you're accustomed to seeing just like a goofy drawing of a penis or like but like this was so specific and like just relentless in what it was depicting. Like it wasn't like a throwaway gag. It was like someone had to really put some serious engineering time into figuring out how to like create the sequence of events that like it was like a complicated thing that this person had to do. It was like the dedication of it made it creepier than it already would have been, which was like considerable.
Yeah.
It was really
the imagination of people on the internet is really
and dedication though. It's
dedication,
not like there's just like persistence of like I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna do it. Like
and they're gonna get it right.
Yeah, it was weird. Thanks for listening to this podcast.
Send your penises to
questions at idlethumbs.net. Please, mainly other things.
Please mainly send questions, but
I'm going to throw out another mention of our other podcasts at idlethumbs.net. We also host other shows you might like, which include, as mentioned earlier in this podcast, Terminal 7, hosted by Nels and Jesse. It's all about the sort of cult hit card game Netrunner. We have designer notes from Soren Johnson, the designer of Civilization 4, and who also worked on Spore.
Yes.
And he does long-form interviews with fellow game developers and gets really like into great detail about their work and their careers and their opinions. That's really cool. We have 3 Moves Ahead, the premier strategy game podcast on the internet. They just celebrated their 300th episode.
Oh my God.
So they're almost 100 up on us.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. They're great. They're still going. Their most recent episode had some classic panelist members on it, like Bruce Garrick, who I really enjoy, and Tom Chick, I believe. And who else do we got? Is that it? Oh, there's Twin Peaks Rewatch, which Jake and I do. It's all about the classic David Lynch, Mark Frost television show Twin Peaks. And several of these shows, including Twin Peaks Rewatch, 3 Moves Ahead, and Dota Today, which is Sean's Dota podcast, which I didn't mention, and Terminal 7, you can now buy brief personal or commercial little mentions on. If you go to store.idlethumbs.net and go to on-air mentions, if you want to get the word out about like something you're working on, or just sort of trash talk a friend, or just say a goofy message or happy birthday or whatever, for a fee, you can do that on several shows on our network. Store.idlethumbs.net, go to on-air mentions, and I will conclude this network plug section now. Thanks for listening. We love your email. We've been getting a lot of it recently, actually, which is really cool. It's always nice to have more than we need. It's a good problem to have. You can send us more at questions@idlethumbs.net. We're on Twitter at Idle Thumbs, on Facebook at facebook.com/Idle Thumbs. Our website is idlethumbs.net/Idle Thumbs. And
I stream at twitch.tv/Idle Thumbs.
Correct.
All one word.
And if you want to experience this podcast on YouTube with fully annotated kind of little table of contents, you can do that at youtube.com/idle videos. That is maintained by our extremely helpful and comprehensively curatorial friend, Johnny Driggs.
Excellent.
Man, that was a lot of stuff.
Wow.
That was a lot of stuff.
Also,
a lot of good stuff.
Also, Spaff is nodding off here, but you will wake up for Robot.
When you hear this.
Robot news.
This episode was sponsored by Ex Machina, which is the upcoming sci-fi film directed by Alex Garland. We talked about it earlier. It sounds pretty exciting. The trailer is cool. That is coming out starting in April.
April 10th in New York and LA, and then wide release probably starting the next week.
Yep.
Or next 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Super.
Yeah. Man, thanks for listening. Also, thanks, Spaff. This episode is also brought to you by Spaff.
Spaff.
1/5 of this episode, somewhere in between a fifth and a fourth, based on when Nick Breckon left, of this episode was brought to you by Spaff.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The reader's pleasure.
Spaff.
Spaff. The reader's pleasure.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.